Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the webinar. And we've got a fabulous panel for you this afternoon, this evening, wherever you happen to be. But before we start introducing our panelists, I'd like to run through just a couple of things very briefly. So I'd like to talk about where we are. This is very much your webinar. So this is your chance to ask a question, to comment, to come in and give your feedback on the webinar. And there are two ways to do that. The first is you can ask live via the microphone. So you can click the icon on your toolbar on the right-hand side of the screen and virtually raise your hand. We can then unmute you and you can ask the question live. Alternately, go into the questions module and type in your question, and we will pick up on that question and feed it to our panelists. I'm really looking forward to hearing what they've got to say. We've got three terrific people for you. And our first panelist is Eric Buck. So Eric, if you guys could turn your cameras on and come with us. So Eric, he's been with Hitachi Vantara for a year, focused on optimizing their digital transformation strategy, as well as leveraging the value-added capabilities of distribution. He's a channel chief and has been in this business for 20 years, with experience ranging from traditional to emerging partner models. He also held roles at distribution, to VAR and to vendor, which gives him great perspective on what it takes to be successful for each audience. Eric's #1 driver this year is to crack the nut for Hitachi Vantara in the mid-market by leveraging partners who are managing through the journey to managed services. Eric has many hobbies, but recently took up retro restoration by acquiring a 1966 International Harvester Scout, which will no doubt keep him very, very busy during the lockdown. Eric, tell us a little bit about Hitachi.
Yeah, hey, thanks again, everybody, for spending time with us today. Our business is heavily focused on making your data work for you and your customers, and making sure that we enable our partners to add their managed services to that capability, and obviously hope to position you as strong as possible.
Excellent. And our second panelist is Larry Walsh. Many of you will know Larry. He's the founder, CEO, and chief analyst of the 2112 Group, a channel research and strategy consultancy. So he's got some fabulous insights on the topics we're going to be discussing today. He's a trusted advisor to vendors and channel chiefs around the world. He's a host of the podcast Pod 2112. Also the founder and publisher of Channelnomics, a news and analysis resource for the channel community. Larry is probably known to many of you as he's a frequent speaker at industry events, and he's the former editor and publisher of several channel and technology magazines. Larry, over to you.
Yeah, I'm not, after an intro like that, Rod, I'm not quite sure what I can add. But I have to say is what we do at 2112 is we monitor the market, we research the trends, and we help vendors and distributors and solution providers understand what's happening in the dynamic world around us. And I have to say, there's never been a time when this market has been more dynamic than it is today, not just due to the circumstances induced by the pandemic, but also because of the accelerated adoption of digital transformation and automation resources. So happy to be here and participate in this conversation.
Fabulous. And our third panelist is Eric Torres, and he's the director of channel development at Datto. He's had over 5 years of Datto, the last 4 as a member of the channel development team. Prior to Datto, he worked in sales and business development in a number of industries, including insurance, banking, and construction. He frequently delivers sales training, both internally for Datto and also for the partner community across the world. And in 2019, he gave over 100 presentations in the US, Canada, and Europe. So, wow, that's 2 a week, Eric. There's some going. He's presented alongside industry leaders, members of the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Department of Homeland Security. So, Eric, just give us a moment on Datto.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you all for joining us today. Datto, we offer a full suite of products geared specifically for the MSPs. We started out in backup business continuity and has since expanded into business management tools, a whole networking line, and then another key focus as of late has been our SaaS protection solutions as well. So a number of different solutions for all of your needs. And then just a little bit about myself. I used to be a Datto partner myself, so I know exactly what it's like staying up at night and worrying about taking care of our clients and utilizing vendors to help me make sure that I'm doing that to the best of my ability.
Fabulous. So before we start, I thought it'd be great to get a level set for everyone on the call. So we thought we'd run a couple of polls. So Caleb, if you could pop up the first poll. What effect has the COVID crisis had on your revenue forecast for the period July the 1st to December the 31st? So from July the 1st just gone to the end of the year. If everyone could answer the question now, that would be awesome. So just pop in your answer. Got almost 50% of people having answered at the moment. So keep those answers coming in. We'll keep the poll open for a few moments more. It's going to be really interesting to see the perspective of the group on the call. Up to about 75% of people who've voted now. So keep those answers coming in. We'll keep it open for the last few seconds to allow everyone to answer. So going to close the polls in 5 seconds. So for those few of you who haven't yet answered, now's a great time to pop those votes in. So closing the polls now. And Caleb, if you could give us the answer. So only 7% of us say none at all, it's business as usual. 14% of us are up 0 to 15%. 17% say our forecast is up 15% plus. 40% of us, far the biggest, say my forecast is down by 0 to 15%. And 21% say the forecast is down 15% plus. So not awesome numbers. Larry, I don't know if you'd like to start and comment on those.
It's not surprising to see numbers like these. The research that we've done at 2112 is consistent with what the attendees are saying. It's pretty much a divide, although this is weighing more towards a down forecast than we've seen in the baseline. Overall, what the industry is telling us, both the managed service providers, resellers, and vendors, is that there's a slight majority that is forecasting. They're either keeping a level budget forecast or a level sales outlet, and a slight tick above that are saying that they are increasing over what they had. And it's largely due to the positioning of different technologies and different service models relative to what the customer needs are. And yeah, and I think that really does make a difference. Again, I'm not surprised to see some numbers like this, mostly because the other thing that we've been hearing, and I'm sure Eric Torres will be able to comment on this, is that MSPs have been challenged by exceeding peak capacity demands by their customers. Their customers are asking more of technology support and fulfillment under existing contracts, which is causing them to burn more cash in ordinary service delivery without any accretive new revenue, coupled with a downturn in many clients either sole paying or canceling contracts. So it is tough out there. I won't deny it.
Excellent. So we've got 2 Erics, so I'll call you Eric T and Eric B. So Eric B, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that we're all adjusting through this, and some of what we've seen naturally, you know, on the storage side, the cycle tends to be a little longer. So when everything first started, we had business in motion already, and so naturally some of that hit from back then is hitting now. So I think that's part of the driver. But I have seen a lot of activity in the market as people make adjustments, and there definitely are certain segments that seem to be winning out there as well. And so I think we've all got to revisit how we're going at the market and consider new ways to attack it, and obviously focus on certain verticals more so than others.
Eric T, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, I don't think those numbers were surprising at all of the people that are joining us today. What I see as a positive is if you add that up, 40% are saying that it's going to be the same or better. And that stuck out to me as a very positive number. Things are on the up and up, and it forced a lot of the Datto partners to adjust where they focus their energy and attention, which is what we're covering here today. So just learning from what others have been doing to pivot, I think that's key. And if you had the same poll in a couple months from now, I bet you that 40% would be somewhere closer to 50 and 60 as people adjust.
Okay, cool. So we've got one more poll before we get into some questions I've got. But again, this is your webinar. So for people on the call, if you've got questions you want to ask, please come in with those. But if we can fire up our second poll, and you can answer this with multiple answers. So what are your biggest challenges? Is it the move to remote selling, the move to digital marketing, a lack of information on market sectors that are still doing well, the fact that some clients are experiencing financial difficulties, or major projects are on hold? And as I say, you can tick on this one more than one box. So please, get those answers coming in now. And again, about 50% of you have already voted, so keep those answers coming through. Now up to about 75% of people on the call have voted, so we'll keep it open for a few more seconds. Your chance to vote, don't waste it. Okay. Cool. And if we can show the results, Caleb. So some clients are experiencing financial difficulties, 70% of us seeing that, 56% of us seeing major projects on hold, 47% not getting information on market sectors that are still doing well. So hopefully we'll be able to answer a lot of those questions on this webinar today. 40% struggling with the move to remote selling, more than are challenged by the move to digital marketing. So Eric B, perhaps I can start with you on this one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think, Rod, when I look at these, and again, I'm sure the audience isn't surprised. I mean, the insights would be, I think a few of these can be combined in the sense that how we engage our customers today is different. And not only that, the needs of the customer have changed. So for example, in a restaurant or in a shopping store, they may have been thinking of centralized information and managing within their building. And now they're looking at curbside carryouts and pickups and how they adjust to those models. And then of course, managing our workforces, if you extend that out. So we're moving more to a decentralized model, which then drives different solutions. And I think that's part of the conversation to be had in those markets where success is occurring, finding ways to not only think about the endpoint devices and the endpoint security, and then naturally, for instance, in our business, we saw a lot of data center storage, and we have virtual storage products that are significantly ramping up our content platform, which is object storage, because it's much easier across demographic geos to be able to reach different types of data because of the way it's organized through an object storage format versus if you were sitting in the office locally and activating that. So I think that's part of what we have to learn, is that it's not that there's not a need so much, but there's definitely an adjustment in how people are buying.
Okay. And Eric T, do you want to come in on this one?
I think that's it right there. It's not the change in the need; it's the change of the adjustment in the buying that these people are doing. So what we have seen is a huge uptick right when the whole pandemic first hit. Everybody was scrambling to work from where they were working from home, and there was a huge uptick. And then it seemed like once they got their staff working from home, that first month, everything then became reality where people did have to focus on remote selling because it set in that we were going to be doing this for the long haul. So things absolutely changed. And then it once it got to that plateau, a lot of our customers started tightening their belts and putting those projects on hold and seeing how this was all going to play off. And what I'm anticipating though is the second or the fourth quarter of this year, that's when things are going to start getting a lot more back to normal. A lot more of those projects can't be on hold forever, and they are going to have to move forward with some of this, even under financial stress that we have today. But slowly, it is going to be coming back to what it used to be, just a whole different way of doing it.
Okay. And Larry, do you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, I think that, as I said on the last question, is that there's a tale of two sides of the industry, and those that were well positioned for the rapid changes that happened as a result of COVID, and those that were caught out of position. And that's what I see when I see major projects on hold. That's what I'm seeing, is that's the major projects. Those are the companies, the vendors, and their partners that weren't well positioned. They were the big heavy iron projects. They were the big software integration projects that just they couldn't move forward because of budget as well as disruptions. The thing I think we need to start thinking about, though, is that as much as I agree with Eric in terms of what's going to happen in the second half going into Q4 and the Q1 of 2021, is that you're going to continue to see an improvement in the economy. I do not think that the major projects that were put on hold are necessarily going to all of a sudden be turned back on. What I think is going on out there is that, yes, businesses are conserving cash. Yes, they're being cautious with what they're spending on. They're spending absolutely on necessities, and we do see that happening in managed services. But the major projects that will come back on, I believe, are going to be more net new around what their future needs are versus continuation of what they were doing before. And that's one of the things that we have to get closer to the customer on, so we understand what the changing needs are, what the changing dynamics are in their operating environments, in their workspaces, in their go-to-market strategies, so that we can help them better position for their recovery.
And so, bouncing off that, Larry, which sectors should people on the call be focused on? Where is, aside from the obvious, where is business good?
At the moment, or going into the future?
Going into the future, looking at the next 6 months.
So, okay, if we go over the next 6 months, public sector, inclusive of K-12 and education, are going to be hot. The entire education system is resetting. Public services are going to reset. You're going to see you're going to see a complete shift in healthcare. We're already seeing large investments being made in automation, in digitizing, more so than the entire what we saw 10 years ago with HIPAA when we were going through the EHR/EMR shift. We're going to see an entire rethinking of digital services and around healthcare. We're seeing a lot being done with remote learning, which is going to lift a lot of both the services-led side of the technology market as well as the endpoint side, because a lot of this is going to require end equipment. And then you're going to start to see some reimagining of how we do business in retail and hospitality. So the most impacted sectors, I believe, are going to be the ones, as the economy starts to come back to life, are going to be the ones that will have the hottest amount for investment, because they're the ones that have the need for change.
Yeah, I'd add to that too. I think, earlier Eric made a point as well that I think first off, your existing clients, they're tight on cash, sure, but I think we got to show a little empathy, because they're sitting here stressed out trying to figure out how to solve for this. And as you listen to the problems they're dealing with, I think some solutions are going to come about, because they're different ones than they were considering previously. So first step, I'd go back to my install base, understand it. That'll also give you a perspective on how much you need to invest in some of these other verticals if you're not heavily invested in the ones that are growing. But don't assume that the ones that are struggling, to Larry's point, aren't going to pop back. They're just going to come back a little differently.
Yep.
And I think, obviously, public sector, everybody knows that the schools and of course, healthcare for sure. I agree with that. I think anything to do with logistics is going to be strong, given that a lot of these are, again, that decentralization, right? So we need to be thinking about, again, edge type efforts, remote access, ability to access cloud type environments. I think that offers a whole host of opportunities for the managed services play as well. So personally, and I know we've been saying this, but I think we're just going to continue to see, not only because as a service cuts down on that capital expenditure requirement, but I think as a service lends itself to that adjustment and that dynamic as the market returns to scale. And I think that that's going to create more on-the-fly development of products as well, which is going to be necessary.
And Eric, how do you see the security market developing in this? Where do you see the really strong sectors there?
That's exactly where I was going to go with this. I see Larry's point about the educational sector, and even more so what happened in the past 3 months exposed the true need and how far back a lot of these organizations were, specifically in the educational sector, where they weren't ready to have all the students working from their homes or tuning in from their homes, and the staff working from homes, and the networks just weren't built for it. And right now is the time to upgrade that. Moving into that next year, the past 3 months, nobody was in these buildings. That was a time to capitalize as a provider to go in and say, look, I know you're struggling. Let me revamp this network to allow for in the future if something like this did happen. And then the second piece of that, which you just mentioned, was the security aspect of all of this. I think even pre-COVID, another one of the verticals that is doing extremely well and dating back to Q4 of last year is the municipalities and governments, specifically to that security factor. They were being targeted heavily. They are still being targeted. And we couldn't pick up a newspaper or tune into something online without hearing about Atlanta, Baltimore, and New Orleans. And that got a lot of the smaller municipalities scrambling, saying, we are vulnerable, we do need to invest in security, let's get an expert in here to help us out. And I think ultimately what that does for both of these two specific verticals, the government and educational, that opens the door for co-managed IT, where on the government side, they do have an IT department, and maybe there's been some changes lately to that IT department, but more and more they're relying on the managed service provider to community to come in, and maybe it's making sure that those networks are safe and secure and have business continuity and all the security features. Or maybe it's the other side of that, saying, let my staff focus on that. I need a managed service provider in here to take care of all the end user tickets that are coming in, with everybody now working from all over the world. So I think those two verticals, the government and educational, and then you throw co-managed IT right on top of that, I do think there's plenty of opportunity out here, and people, Datto partners are being successful in utilizing that.
Rod, can I jump in on that just from,
Sure.
If you want to go ahead first, I'll let you go.
Go ahead, Larry, I'll wait, that's fine. Yeah.
Look, I appreciate what Eric Torres is saying about security. And I started my career in information security. I know a fair amount, more than your average bear on this. One of the things you have to be very careful of, though, is overplaying the security card when trying to develop new customers and develop pipeline. Security is table stakes. Is that no matter what you do, you should be ensuring that there is covering the same security triad, the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The problem that we have as an industry when it comes to security is we constantly overplay its necessity and value. There is a tipping point in how much security is actually useful relative to the investment. And nobody, people rarely talk about this. But if you overplay the security part of it, then you could actually drive the customer away, because it does provide an incremental cost sometimes without an incremental benefit. And so you have to keep that in mind. Just focus on the solution that the customer is trying to solve and make security a part of it, not necessarily always, bludgeoning them with. I was watching a video this morning from an MSP. He had a customer talking. The customer saying, "Oh, there's a lot of hacking going on out there." But okay, I've heard that story for 25 years. The story hasn't changed. Neither has the solution. We're fighting this constantly. So we always have to keep in mind, let's focus in on the business solution and just make sure the business solution is secure.
Yeah, Larry, I think that plays well with where I was headed, in the sense that, I was thinking just in the SMB, if you drive through your local strip mall, you see the yoga store, the karate studio, the financial services business, they all still want to open their shops up. And so the solution they require, to the points earlier, they definitely require a different kind of security because now it's decentralized, but they also need, devices, AV devices that allow them to have their own studio, essentially, right? They need to be able to have a certain amount of quality of service from their network and through their network to be able to ensure that their customers are experiencing their class, if it's live, the right way. And actually, we all like to buy some things locally, and so having those services, the app-driven side of those services, the onboarding, the device management aspects of those services, those all start to become really critical to their future success. And I think it's not about them finding a good piece of real estate and being able to host everybody there. Now it's about how good of a show can they put on from their, their limited space, and how many clients can they reach.
Great. I've got a live question coming in now, so I'm going to unmute Usama. So Usama, you should now be able to ask your question live.
Hi there, can you guys hear me?
We
can indeed.
Awesome. So Larry, I totally agree with what you just said around security. But one thing that recently happened regarding selling to the industry and what technologies they're looking at and transforming, we sent out kind of a survey, 3,000 surveys out there that were responded to. And what's interesting is, and it was actually a shocker to me, 90% came back about cost. It didn't come back on anything new. Like we said, here's the new technologies, here's the new security things, here's the new this, here's the new that. And at the end, everybody clicked, like 90%, not everybody, 90% plus clicked on the cost and cost savings. So I'm kind of not sure as we try to forecast what's coming down the pike if we have it right.
Yeah. So here's what I'll share with you on this, and I think some of you may find this surprising. 55% of customers will pay for a better experience and outcome. They'll pay, actually I should say, they'll pay more, not less. It's up to you to explain to them what they're getting out of this. For most of my career, I've watched vendors and partners describe ROI as cost savings. To me, that's a mistake. Is the way that I advise people to think about is to talk to customers, is talk to them about the experience that they're looking for and the outcomes they're trying to achieve, and explaining to them what's the level of investment to get to where they need to get to. It's not about cost savings, it's about helping them grow their business. And if you can start to say, because this is usually the way this conversation goes, is that if you give me $1, I'm going to save you $1. Instead of, if you give me $1, I'm going to help you get $10 in return, because I'm going to help you grow your business. I'm going to expedite your processes through automation. I'm going to make your customers' experience better. And that's the conversation we need to go in. Oftentimes people, when they get hung up on cost, it's because they're not quite sure what they're going to get out of it. So the only thing they have to go, the only place they can fall back on is to argue over the price.
Thank you.
Eric B or Eric T, do you want to come in on that one?
Sure, I can comment on that, and I think that's absolutely spot on. When you look at an MSP's customers, overwhelmingly, the majority of them, they just want to know that their solutions are working and that their ease of business is happening. They don't care about exactly what it is and what bells and whistles you have and what security aspects you're adding to the network. They just want it to work. So it's all about selling them the result and telling them, here's what you're going to get. If you choose this plan with me, you're going to get all of this. And then in their mind, as the business owner's mind, they're going through it going, okay, increased productivity, yes, I need that. Improved uptime, absolutely, I need that. Improved security, yes. And then when you don't give them the opportunity to even think like, okay, cost, you have to justify it by saying, here's exactly what you're getting, and here's why you're going to be able to sleep at night. Here's what you're no longer going to have to worry about, and ultimately not giving them the chance to go straight to that price point and let them make that decision on their own.
Yeah, I think if I were to talk a little more directly to the cost side of the equation, because I do agree with the guys that you do need to obviously present the value, but I also think that if you're bringing them new technology, naturally there should be some level of expectation, whether it's a security, meaning from a data perspective, I'm removing duplication, I'm helping you protect your privacy and ensure that your business is going to be safe, or excuse me, from an efficiency standpoint, your team is no longer going to be digging for it because it's more readily available. We're using metadata to organize it. But we at Hitachi definitely live by this concept of don't just store your data, activate your data, enhance your data, and monetize your data. And so we like to take you through that whole journey of being able to not only just enrich it and get information from it, but then to use it with your customers to make new recommendations to help drive a more customized and catered experience to the customer. And oftentimes we think of it in that defensive posture, I think, which Larry led with, which is around, oh my gosh, cost came up. I need to focus on that side of the coin instead of how we can turn this investment into something that is revenue generating.
Okay. And I've got another question coming in. This is a question that's coming through the question box. And the question is the move to home working a one-time blip, or are there ongoing opportunities? Who wants to step in on that one?
I don't mind jumping first. This is a personal opinion. I think it's a tipping point topic. I really believe that we've been decentralizing for a long time, and oftentimes we've used the investment in brick and mortar to justify sending people places. Technology has a lot more capabilities than we give it credit for, and it's just a matter of having a higher number of users fully using that technology to continue to drive with 5G around the corner as well. I think that distance isn't the issue so much more. I mean, think about how much it costs somebody to live in a major suburb and commute to work. And if they can do that same job and move to a place where the cost of living is lower, the tax base maybe is lower for them, it starts to make more sense. And I think as a country, that's, forget the world for a second, just the US, I think we have tremendous amount of benefits by being able to decentralize. So I do believe that the fact that we are all outside of the brick and mortar for good reason right now is going to encourage us to get more creative in adopting a model that doesn't require it.
I think we were built for this. We've been planning for this, and for years we've been getting our customers to get that work from anywhere mentality and being able to remote in, whether they're on vacation, working from home, wherever they're at. So this just exemplified that and said, yes, we can do this. I can tell you personally, I'm not sure. My thought is that I don't think we'll ever go back to 100% the way it was, where people are just normally in an office. I can tell you personally from Datto, there is no thought of even moving back to an office this year because we're more productive at home. And it's proven that we can do this, and things are moving along just fine within Datto. And I think that's the way it is for most places. And yes, there are going to be cases where you do have to go into an office, and what I see happening is it's never going to be 100% back in the office. It's going to be in the office 3 days a week, at home 2 days a week, or hey, I really need to focus and get this done. I'm going to do it from home where I have no interruptions. Hopefully no interruptions. But I think the productivity and the fact that MSPs have been preparing for this for years, I don't think it's just a flash in the pan. I think this is definitely here to stay.
If I could switch this a bit for you, Larry, you mentioned earlier, because I've also heard this from a lot of the community members, that the home working is actually leading to a lot of work with no extra revenue. What's the answer to that? What can people do who are forced into that situation?
Well, I think that there's a few things that are going to change, and it's going to change over the next 24 months or so. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is going to go on for another 24 months or so. I'm not talking about the conditions. I mean, just the entire general pandemic thing. That's not going to unravel really easily. But we do have a new actor we have to take into consideration in all of this, and that's a CFO. And the people who control the money within our customers, whether they're the owner operators or they do have CFOs or comptrollers, have discovered that there is a cost benefit that comes with all of this. They are seeing a 40% productivity swing. They see people who are performing about 120% of normal productivity, and those are performing about 80% of normal productivity. But they're equaling out when you take the cost of not having to support them within a traditional office space into consideration. So we're seeing a lot of rethinking and rebalancing. But to Eric Torres's point, what this is going to do, Rod, this is going to change the nature of work. You know, we were, you know, if I'm looking here, you know, just the four of us that we can see, three of us have white hair. We were born and raised on 40-hour work weeks. Now, I don't know what that means. I've never worked a 40-hour work week, but I've heard of it. You know, it's kind of like the Loch Ness Monster, Rod. You all believe in it, but it doesn't, you've never actually seen it.
It becomes real after 3 extra scotches, Larry. It really does.
You know what? We're going to put a test to that one. So, but the reality is that we're going to see over very quickly. We're going to see the nature of work change from this hourly, you know, to a task. That we are, you know, to what Eric Torres was leading up to is that, yeah, I have to come to the office because I have a task to do there, or I have a project, so I'm going to work 3 days, and those 3 days may be a weekend, but I'm not going to take time. I'm going to not work some other day. And it's going to be based, the value of your employment is going to be based on what your tasks are, what your output is. And that's a really different way of thinking. It's going to be very uncomfortable. The thing is, when it comes to the MSPs that are delivering and they're being overtasked now because they have obligations on their existing contracts to deliver services, and now their service delivery is being extended to a far greater surface area. This is now an opportunity to renegotiate and rethink what those engagements look like. And we're already seeing MSPs that are changing their rate schedules to accommodate for, well, what do I do now to support the work from home? Because now that is something that was never anticipated, and they don't have a way out of it in the existing relationship. But going forward, that can now be a premium service that you now have on demand from home, that you now extend the service delivery to the home worker in the home environment. And it's going to create a new dynamic between the provider and the customer. But it's one that's going to be necessary. I don't think the market has already spoken. We're not going backwards.
Well, I think the points you guys make too really tie into, you know, I think about my 2 kids, and my oldest, who's 16. The only way I get him out of bed early in the morning is if he's on his Xbox playing with a group of guys from Europe, right? So the fact is that they're already trained. There's a few generations of remote workers who have learned how to communicate effectively and dynamically and are results oriented in a different scale than maybe we've thought of. And so I think culturally, socially, we're already on that journey. And these types of things are going to push us further in that direction.
Okay. And I have another question coming in, which I think is ideal for you, Eric, with the sales training you've been doing. And the question is, we're being told to be helpful and not to hard sell. Can you give some specific examples of what that really means?
I assume you're pointing that to me with the, okay.
Absolutely.
Nobody likes being sold to. And my advice on no matter what you're selling, specifically technology, the hard sale, none of us like that. It could be anything. Nobody likes getting a cold call. Nobody likes being told you need this and here's why you need it. So it is more listening than anything. When I'm doing any kind of sales training, it's what kinds of questions are you asking them, and then how long are you listening to what their actual needs are? That's the sales technique that no matter what you're selling that you need to adhere to is The ones that go in there and are all speeds and feeds, and here's what I can do for you, and here's the stats on that, they are going to be least likely to sell compared to those that are asking what their needs are and changing what they're offering based on what their needs are and adjusting to exactly what's being told to them. So my biggest advice when I'm talking to any kind of person in sales is listen. Don't even talk, just listen. They'll tell you what they need, and then you can provide their a solution that adheres to that.
Yeah, I think Eric's dead on. I mean, the number one rule I learned in sales was 2/3 or more of the conversation should be the customer talking. And I think that rule still holds today. By the way, they'll teach you about things you didn't realize they wanted when you're listening, which helps as well. And I think that that's really important. But I also think I opened earlier saying empathy is critical today. And I think to Eric's point, if you're going in and you're asking them how they're dealing with this and what they're doing about it, then you've already got some nice open-ended conversations to start and hear. They're already thinking about these problems. It plays into the challenger sale as well with the concept of rational drowning, because they're now faced with these issues that they may not have faced before, and they're feeling a bit overwhelmed. So I think open-ended questions are highly beneficial right now.
Okay. And Larry, I have a follow-up question for you. Do you see an MSP opportunity to start selling premium home support contracts? And how would that look, since controlling that is very hard?
It's an interesting question. It depends. The question I have is, then, not to be obtuse about this, but are we talking about selling this on an individual basis or to companies, to their employees? There's going to be opportunities for both, because one of the things that we have that we've discovered over the past couple of months is the things we don't know, and the things that we're unprepared for. And home users, as much as employees, are dramatically finding out that they need more help than they ever thought they did to overcome what we often consider to be mundane issues. The manufacturer support that comes with a lot of the endpoint devices just isn't sufficient for what the home user, what the prosumer needs. And you can go with any functioning adult's home nowadays, and you can see the types of applications that they're trying to use on the types of machines that they're using. And give you a great example, my wife, her office is right above me. She is desperately trying to make 3D rendering work on a consumer PC, and it just doesn't work, and the problems that come along with it. So we have to start thinking about, yes, we are going to see more opportunities in the prosumer market for managed services. Okay.
And in terms of selling that to companies for their employees, is that the bigger opportunity?
Maybe. I think we'd have to take a look at it. I think there's going to be a premium opportunity to restructure managed services contracts to take into account the number of people working from home that will be looking for ongoing or on-demand support that simply wasn't considered in the capacity equation that we have today, or we had prior to the pandemic. So I definitely think there's going to be a restructuring around that.
Yeah, I think I'd add
come in on this one.
Rod, I think you're going to see HR's human resources start adding that as a benefit in bigger companies, whereby, I work from home, and in the middle of the afternoon, my quality of service is bad because, everybody's home working on their games or whatever. And oh, by the way, I've got video calls, and I got this and I got that. So it becomes more of it's not just about my work experience. It starts to become about how do I manage the network in my house. To the prosumer point, we're all becoming prosumers with the available technology today, because we're all at home and trying to make all these things work that we would have relied on a company for in the past. And so again, that decentralization that I talked about earlier, I think we're going to see things like HR benefits pick up, employees having support for their home network and things of that nature.
And that's a whole other opportunity inside the client to go and
Absolutely.
Sell something to.
Yep.
Eric T, do you want to come in on that one?
I hadn't even thought of that. I'm just sitting here going, yeah, that's an absolutely brilliant take. That's going to be the HR's benefit to these home users, saying, look, I'm going to help you out with your connection. I'm going to give you the top of line hardware, because I do know that what it's like working from home, and you're on a video call and the kids are in school on their video calls, and suddenly the quality of the overall work environment is draining, where the HR take on that, I think that's absolutely brilliant, and that opens up a whole new door, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And I've got another really interesting question coming in, and the question is, we're seeing an increasing demand for co-sharing with our clients. In other words, I assume what's meant by that is not taking a service for the client, but working with the client in a much more collaborative way. A lot of MSPs have traditionally said, okay, we're going to do this for you. Do you see that as a short-term, long-term, or a really good opportunity? What do you guys think?
I can start with that. I think it's absolutely long-term, and the thought of co-managed IT and going in and helping that internal IT department, not trying to take that over and flat out letting them know, I'm not here to take your job. I'm here to make you shine. I'm here to make sure that you look good in front of your boss. That's the goal of co-managed IT. Then it's working backwards from that. Once you establish some form of trust, it's going back and saying, okay, well, how can I make you shine? What would you like me to focus on? Is it the security aspects we were talking about before? Is it the end user ticketing that comes with everybody working from home and all the issues that come up? So I absolutely don't think that this is something that's a spike this year, and then next year it's going to go back down. And I think more and more MSPs are tapping into that co-managed market. And the ones that I talk to, a lot of the smaller ones, they often say to me, Eric, I'm not big enough. I don't have the capability to go after a large organization and help them with their IT. And I think that's not necessarily the right answer. I think managed service providers of all sizes can help out businesses of all sizes within their markets. It's just having that mindset and saying, yes, I can do this. I can come in and talk to that large IT organization and see how I can help them. I think the mindset of thinking that I'm too small and I can't do it, I think that slowly those will go away, and more organizations are going to realize, yes, I can absolutely tackle some of that and I can provide value.
I mean, how many times have we engaged some type of a private service for our home or for our personal needs, and that individual was no longer organized through a company hierarchy, but they happen to be the best at what they do, so they've spun off and they do their own thing. So there's plenty of room for small business here, and I definitely agree with that. And I think the presentation is similar to, you have a relationship with your customer, and they're talking about the challenges of their IT staff who's used to being on site and being involved and on top of things. Maybe they've had to make cutbacks because of the cash flow issues. So I think they're still going to have those same challenges, and it's a matter of how you bring that service to bear for them. But once you've learned what their challenge is, presume that's everybody else's challenge until you hear otherwise. Mm-hmm. At least lead with that as the door opener, and then ask some open-ended questions. But yeah, Eric T's spot on. That's absolutely going to be here for years to come, if not become the new normal in many cases.
Larry, do you want to step in on that one?
Sure, I'm going to be the contrarian and say that this is probably part of the reason why some MSPs are feeling a pinch. This is something that should have been done already. It's, the entire idea of automation, automate everything and not having contact is part of the issue that hampers a lot of our industry, and it's also a large contributor to the poor customer experience that many customers report. We should be collaborating. We should be in close contact with customers. We should be talking about their needs. This should be a part of the norm, not something that we're discovering or even rediscovering. So, and it's the entire idea, Eric, Torres, what you said about not being big enough. This is also part of the problem with many MSPs, is they fall back on size as being and I hate to say it negatively like this, being an excuse for not doing something, for not doing the right thing. We have to get over this idea that there is certain classes where things are different. They're not. The customers always want a superior experience. They always want to get value. They want to have, even though again, nobody likes being sold to, and I could throw some great numbers for you about how particularly millennials are avoiding salespeople, actively avoiding salespeople, right? Now, but they do appreciate when you help them. And if you can help them through their challenges, you can help them find their solutions. If you can walk the path with them, then they're going to stay with you. I'm going to give you a good example, and I hope I'm not chewing up your time, Rod, but my 2112's MSP have never met them, have never spoken with anyone there, yet they send me a bill. And in fact, not only did they send me bills, but they also screwed up my bills. They screwed up my contract and still have not gotten a call from them. They have provided me with adequate service because yes, they have delivered to me what I expected, but they did not give me a good experience. And so at the end of my contract, come October, I'm changing MSPs. That's the reason why you should never just automate everything. If you lose contact with the customer will almost definitely lose contact with you.
I think a few people are going to call Larry after this about his service.
Officially on notice.
Larry, I think to your point, that is part of the pinch for sure because this is established. But in my mind, I also think of it along the lines of like a Moore's law, whereby the catapult happening here is forcing more adoption and more evolution and creation of new services. With cloud, I think the average number of clouds is up to almost 4. So you're starting to see new services and companies evolve into these managed services spaces as the market continues to shift.
Here, let me give you the bad news. All right, is that we've thrown around the 2 words trusted advisor like a punchline for 20 years. All right, it's supposed to be, it's like air, just assume that it's correct. And we have lost that element, what the true element of trusted advisor is. But the customer still says, hey, I know somebody. It's the entire I got a guy. And so, so Eric Buck, when you're talking about cloud adoption being up, you're absolutely right. The number of cloud vendors that MSPs are working with on average is 7.5. The number of cloud products being sold into a single customer is 4 per average contract. But here's the really interesting number. We've surveyed end users on their experience with service providers, particularly resellers and MSPs. 59% of the time, the customer will go to their MSP looking for cloud advice. That's a third more than they're going to a search engine. It's twice as often as going to a vendor direct. All right, that sounds pretty good. Guess what? They only get the sale 11% of the time, and they are twice as likely to be dissatisfied with the service if they buy through an MSP or a partner rather than buying direct from a vendor. That is all attributable to losing contact.
Yeah, that makes sense. That last piece is the biggest concern for me. I think close rates are what they are, and some of that, could be potentially explained, but that last component is super, super important.
And I'm sorry I have to do this, but Rod, if you don't mind me, that study we conducted was 2112 in Ingram Micro Cloud. I have to give them proper attribution.
There you go. Covered it off. Nice job.
So I've got another interesting question coming in, and someone very complimentary. So they love the ideas of some of the new services that you guys have been talking about. Are there any other thoughts on new services that MSP should be offering, bearing in mind the way the market's changing?
Well, I mean, if not to dodge it, right, but I think earlier, right, the conversation was had around asking your customer what the challenge they're having. I think there's an opportunity to just reframe whatever it is you're offering them today, or even come back with completely new offering to them. That's what I would be considering is if I had all greenfield and I wanted adoption of my service, what would that look like? And then I would consider going back to my clients with a fresh take, because in fairness, most of the time clients again were encumbered by the environment they lived in, and that's changed. So I think I would just kind of forget some of that history and maybe come back and re-explain what my company's value prop is, because any company you do business with, they may offer you 10 great things and you use 2 or 3 of them and you forget about the other 7. And then as the people who are in love with their own solutions, we think everybody knows all 10. And you have to go back, I think, and have that conversation from the bottom up.
Okay. Quick question, Larry, from someone: where do we get those stats from? So could they go on your website and get the study that you were just talking about?
Yeah, so the Ingram study hasn't been released yet. It's going to be coming out in a couple of weeks. It should be available on the Ingram Micro Cloud site as well as the 2112 site. Typically, most of our partner-facing research is published free, so you can find it at 2112.com.
Okay, and we're almost out of time, so if we could be brief on this one, but a question, bearing in mind what's been said, with social distancing, how do I maintain that contact with my clients?
Carefully.
I can take that one. I think the communication with your clients, I mean, we're communicating right here from all over the country right now, but it's like we're in the same room. So utilizing some of the resources you already have, you don't have to be on site to have that close communication with somebody. So I think, yes, Larry, being careful with what you're doing, but ultimately it could be the same as setting up a call like this. And having that personal interaction that's just as easy as a video call.
Yeah, I think that's obvious and spot on, right? I don't think it's oversimplifying things to say video calls are a great avenue for that. I'll say that my son, my 16-year-old, has his own sign business, and he supported a local high school last night when they were doing their graduation, and they did it completely different with cars driving through a line, and they posted signs of happy graduation day and all these things, and picking up their diploma and announcing their name. So the point is people still want to have the same experiences they did before, but they're going to have them in a different way. So your customers are going out and about. There may be other ways to reach them if you feel that personally being in front of them is important. Just think differently than sitting in an office.
Okay, we're pretty much out of time. So we have a couple of questions that we haven't been able to get to. So I'm going to send it to these guys, and they will be, so if your question hasn't been answered, they promised to get back to us with the answer tomorrow, so we'll be able to post it along with the recording of the webinar tomorrow. But I'd like to say a huge thank you to Eric Buck, to Eric Torres, and to Larry Walsh for some really, really interesting insights. There is a survey coming up as you come out of this, and everyone who completes that survey will get a chance to be entered for a $100 Amazon card. So we'll make Mr. Bezos that wee bit richer than he is already. So please do take that survey. But Larry, Eric, and Eric, thank you very much indeed for some really, really terrific insights. Great job, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. I enjoyed it.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. This was great.